grab, I guess, the bull by the horns, the elephant in the room, or the bull in the room, is the thorny issue of the coming recession and what that might mean for markets and how we deal with that. So to help us answer that question and navigate, I'd like to welcome to the stage Sandsoft's Ratko Bozovic. There he is. Come up. I don't think I'm loud enough. Oh, you can hear me good, right?
Starting with people. We are a people-first company that's focused on mobile-first game publishing. But we also announced the opening of the game studio recently. And we're also doing investments and a couple other things that you'll heard about in the next few months. So as I said, we are headquartered in Riyadh. We announced the opening of the game studios for those who are open for new jobs and the ones that are developing, doing art, and any other things related to game development. Please check out our LinkedIn page. We also have offices in a couple of other places, like Shanghai in China, Barcelona, Helsinki, and we're also co-developing a game with a team that's sitting in Leamington Spa in United Kingdom. So let's start with the global trends. And the question right now that's been asked for a lot of times throughout this year, are we in a recession already, or it's already started? And most of the economists actually agree that the recession has started because we saw a couple of consecutive quarters of GDP decline. But I'm focusing now on the gaming, and gaming is, of course, part of the tech sector, which is a bit struggling right now. And one obvious example of this is this chart that I pulled only a week ago, and it's already outdated because there were a couple of new layoffs, like 11,000 people from Facebook and a couple of others. And now we see actually fourth quarter as the biggest in terms of the layoffs in this year. So the question is whether gaming industry will be recession-proof. And the current reports are not giving us good signals. As you can see, there are more and more reports that are showing that the consumer spending in gaming is declining. So yeah, we are not that recession-proof as we thought of. Mobile gaming as the biggest part of gaming industry, which holds actually more than half of the overall revenue, is also struggling a little bit in the last couple of quarters. This is the data from Sensor Tower, which shows that there was a certain decline for the last 3 quarters. Similar chart from Data AI shows the gaming revenue in mobile gaming for the last 4 years. And as you can see, in the 3rd quarter of this year, there was, for the first time, a decline. But on the bright side, if you compare it to the pre-pandemic period, 2019, you can see that there was actually still a growth of 25%. So what can we expect? Can we expect the gaming to perform during the recession? Well, we have experience from the last great recession in 2007 and 2008, which showed that, in a way, gaming was resilient. But that was actually the golden age of gaming, where we had a lot of growth on PC, console, and mobile started to appear. Right now, we don't really know what to expect. But I think we should be optimistic because from the current signals, compared to other industries, we see a much lower slowdown than the rest of the industries. So what's the general outlook for the next 5 to 10 years? It's actually quite optimistic. This is the gaming revenue that's forecasted for the next 5 years, and it's actually forecasted to be growing for more than 50%, with a compounded annual growth rate of 9%. Here's another chart from another company, Global Data, that also shows the similar amount of growth in the next 8 years, where mobile gaming will stay as the ultimate front runner of the gaming industry. And another chart that also shows mobile gaming growth that's expected to be between 5 and 10% of the annual growth rate. Now let's look into the advertising. Advertising was always a bit erratic when it comes to its relation with the GDP growth. So whenever there was a recession, advertising, companies were cutting advertising spend. That was one of the first things that they were cutting, which, of course, in my opinion, as a marketeer, wasn't the best thing. And obviously, afterwards, the biggest winner that came out in the recessions were the companies that were not cutting advertising budgets too much. Currently, in the last few quarters, we definitely see a slowdown, even on the digital channels, which you can see here on the left side. But the good thing is that they're still growing. And then on the on the traditional marketing side, which is television, you see already a huge decline, especially in the last quarter. That shows also one trend that's been happening for the last few recessions, where people are shifting marketing spend from brand channels towards performance channels, where online marketing definitely belongs. User acquisition in the latest year or two had a couple of headwinds. Well, starting probably with the privacy changes that were introduced by Apple more than a year ago, which I guess you all heard of. So you kept seeing those small ATT prompts, which were limiting the user data to be shared with us marketeers. And that substantially increased the difficulty of doing marketing for mobile games, because it increased the technical complexity, measurement, and a lot of other things. But then there was also a huge shift of user behavior after the first pandemic period. So we saw after first lockdowns, well, first lockdowns were actually a honeymoon for gaming, but then afterwards came the drop in recession, drop in monetization, and then paired with the macroeconomic factors that you saw throughout this year, like high inflation, rising energy prices, layoffs, and other things, gave us something to think about from the marketing perspective. And then there was one overlooked thing, which was the amount of investments that went into gaming, which from the marketing standpoint were not that great, because it actually increased the competitiveness on the advertising networks, increased the pricing, which made it a bit harder to achieve ROI positive effects of our campaigns. One thing that recession definitely brings is the uncertainty of user behavior, uncertainty of the funding for our companies, uncertainty in the marketing performance. And I'm now going to give you a few tips how to reduce this uncertainty and go through the recession unharmed. One of the things is quite obvious. We keep hearing that data is important, data is the new oil for more than a decade, but in recession that becomes even more important. You need to invest in your analytics structure, you need to invest in analytics systems that are ingesting your data, because it's not only MMP data that you need to have, but you also need to pair it with some other sources like SKAd network that's coming from iOS, and you need to pair it with media mix modeling. You need to constantly run experiments, which puts a lot of focus on analytics. There are some new techniques that you need to employ, like media mix modeling, which was mentioned. And there are, of course, a couple of open source tools that you can use, like Robin from Facebook, Lightweight from Google, and then some companies that are helping with incrementality and media mix models. Now, cash is definitely one of the most important things in recession. So keeping the cash flow healthy, making sure that you have enough runway for running your marketing activities. And what that actually means is that you need to be super diligent with the spend of your marketing spend to make sure that you're cutting ineffective campaigns and channels. And then you're supplementing that with a lot of experimentations, incrementality tests that you keep running to make sure that you're not cannibalizing other channels with the channel that you introduce. By the way, when I say UA channels, I mean Facebook, Google, Snapchat, and a lot of other networks, plus the programmatic channels. And once you find those profitable channels, those lucrative pockets of traffic, then you need to double down on them. What usually happens in the recession is also the drop of consumer spending, which is something that we usually closely monitor with LTV curves, or, well, actually lifetime value curves, which usually look like this. So we plot the monetization in the game by having a curve that shows how it progresses over days and weeks and months. And what can happen usually during the recession is that you, prior to recession, you see a healthy curve, but then a few months in, you see a drop of monetization, which implies that you need to change your marketing objectives and marketing goals. And then later on, it can go even worse, which means that you need to constantly recalibrate your models and make proper forecasts so you can properly predict the marketing activities and funding for the future. And what this actually brings is the extension of the payback periods. So that means in practice that the money that you invest in marketing is not going to get back maybe in 6 months, but in 9 months throughout the recession, because simply monetization of the users is getting lower. This is an example of one of the games that we were forecasting, where a drop of just 15% of the average revenue per daily active user extended the payback period almost double, from 180 days to over a year, actually almost a year. In practice, that means that you need more funding, more financial runway to run marketing campaigns, because if you're just going bootstraps, so if you're funding your UA investments with the money that you keep receiving from UA networks and app stores, that can usually slow down your growth, which means that you need to find partners or other financial instruments to fuel the growth. In practice, that means that you can, if you're using partnerships with publishers or credit lines or things like that, you can accelerate your growth multiple times. Another way to successfully go through the marketing, through the macroeconomic downturns, is to find countries that are less affected. And we have yet to see what are those going to be in this recession. But historically, we saw, for example, that Scandinavian countries were a bit more recession resilient. For example, Australia also went for 25 years without any recession. I'm also really bullish on this region, especially Saudi Arabia, which is showing really fast growth in gaming and good financial reserves as a country. So I expect that that will be also one of the countries that will go for recession relatively unharmed. But what you need to do is to look into your data, look into your player behavior, and check those opportunities that you can still leverage to grow your games. One thing that you definitely need to do if you want to scale your games, especially to the top grossing charts, is to diversify your UA channels. It's hard to run your marketing with only a few channels. You need to go towards like 10 or 20 channels in parallel. But to do that, you need to meet 3 requirements. First, you need to have positive unit economics, which in practice means that your cost per install is lower than your lifetime value of the user. And then you have to have the budgets, so funding to run the marketing campaigns. And of course, you need to have UA capabilities to actually manage these campaigns. If one of these requirements is not met, you're going to be in a situation where, for example, you have budgets to fund the marketing, good game with good product market fit, but you don't have capabilities in-house, which means that you need to find partners, outsource partners, or build the in-house capabilities, which can often take like 6 to 12 months. Sometimes you will have enough funding and good UA team, but then the game won't support the growth because you simply won't have enough monetization, and that's where you need to stop the campaigns and try to improve your game. And then the third variant would be to have a good game, enough people in-house to manage the campaigns, but not enough funding. That's something I already mentioned. I always suggest that you start with the basic UA channels, like the Facebook's inventory, and then of course there's TikTok as one of the biggest newcomer. Then there are also programmatic channels, etc. But I don't want to go into details right now. And then you need to pick your battles, because at the end, all these things paired together will mean that you have to manage a lot of things at the same time, much more than in a period pre-recession, which means that you need to pick the priorities for your team and make sure that you do some things really well. And from the product side, that also means that you need to focus maybe on the live games that are already producing good revenue streams, instead of launching new games, which is always more riskier in today's gaming market. And last but not the least, you have to stay optimistic. Lack of optimism is usually one of the triggers of a recession. And on the marketing side, that means that if you are not optimistic, you might cut your spend more than you should, and that will impact your long-term growth. And of course, you probably heard of the companies that were actually founded during a recession and grew, like Walt Disney or Electronic Arts, or lately in the last recession, Airbnb and Uber. And then I can also give an example of the last let's say, pre-recession period when the pandemic started, where a lot of gaming companies actually slashed their budget, and that really bite them in the ass later on because they were not riding that lockdown wave of audience and revenue growth. So to summarize, you need to make a foundation with your analytics system. You need to make sure you cut the ad waste during the recession, and then also improve your ROI. You need to keep an eye on the monetization patterns in your game. You need to expect lower consumer spend, which will reflect in the slower payback periods. You need to make sure that you have enough financial runway for your marketing activities because otherwise you're not going to scale. You should try to find countries that are less affected by the recession. You need to diversify your marketing channels. You need to pick your battles, so prioritize the things that are really getting you into the right track towards growth. And you need to stay optimistic. And then for the last, as I said, we are also doing publishing. So we have really seasoned team of many experienced game professionals that have more than 10 or 20 years of experience in gaming. So we can bring a lot of business expertise, marketing expertise, funding, supporting services like localization, QA, all in mind, all with the goal to make sure that we grow together and that we hit those top grossing charts. Thank you.
Awesome. That was genuinely brilliant. That was a really, really useful talk, not just obviously focused on UA, but business strategy in a recession. And we are in challenging times. I noticed you didn't feature the UK as a really promising market, so I'll just take that. I'll take that on board. You're probably right. But
well,
that's
based
fine.
on the latest news, it's not going to get there.
Self-inflicted problems.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions for Ratko out there? We've got microphones out. Anybody got a question to throw? There was quite a lot of data in there. Is there one over there? I can't see. Oh yeah. She's off. She's off.
Hello,
Catherine.
Hi, and thank you for the presentation. So just a question. So you asked developers to partner with you. Are you sort of like an agency that takes, like agencies usually take big developers with big budgets, or are you like a platform where the developers maybe can supply their own content and you can do like minimal consultations for like, indie developers with minimal budgets? How's your business model operate?
Well, we consider ourselves as a mobile-first game publisher and developer, both games in the early stages, but also the games that are already live. So we have funds to test the game first, and then if we see traction, we are more than happy to invest in games, invest in teams, and help you scale up your business.
Thank you very much.
They've got a booth outside, so you can go and chat and check those. Any other questions we've got there? Is one? No, someone just. Oh, there's a question over here. It's a chap in a blue sweater.
Okay, sir. Wonderful, wonderful conversation. Now, although this is a focus mainly on the mobile game industry, how do you manage to make sure that games from other platforms, say PC, PlayStation, and whatnot, is able to adapt according to your own logistics plan?
Yeah, I know you're a mobile games publisher predominantly, but do you have any thoughts about the other genres, other platforms, where PC and console, are they going to suffer? How can they deal?
Yeah, I see a similar situation for other platforms, where mobile gaming has historically, at least in the last decade, has shown the strongest growth. So that's where I'm most bullish on.
Yeah.
But I believe that there will be a similar situation on PC and consoles. So there will be a certain decline, but the long-term forecasts are optimistic.
So I think what we're saying, a lot of the advice remains the same about, look at the path not traveled and be optimistic, but also keep an eye on cash flow, right? UA is obviously slightly different in those platforms than it is in mobile. There's different approaches. So, is there any other questions? Okay, fantastic. I've got one. If you've come with a lot of tips there, a lot of suggestions, and I've made a few notes for my business. So if you had one, certainly for small developers, if you had one particular thing to be your absolute watchword in slightly tougher economic times, what would you? Is the one thing above all? Is it, is it purely about cash flow? Is it about monitoring, your UA or analytics? What's the most important of those things?
Well, most important is definitely to keep trying. I mean, if you just get scared of all the macroeconomic environment and you try to wait, that might be too late probably. I mean, gaming is still experiencing growth in a way, and then the forecasts are good. So I believe that you should seize the moment and try.
Yeah.
And even if you fail, I mean, it is still a great learning.
Yeah. Fantastic. So thank you very much. Thank you for that brilliant presentation.
Thank you.
And
Shukran.
Sandsoft have a massive booth out there, so do go and see them and chat to them
Yes,
later.
we are just in front of there on the right side, so please visit our booth for any other information that you might have.